Good morning and welcome to the July 2025 Koha US General Meeting. Kristi has put the agenda in the chat. The first item on our agenda is announcements. Does anybody have announcements? Does not seem like anybody has.
I'll make an announcement. I just want to say a big shout out to Fred and Chip and John for staffing the booth at ALA. It was incredible to have them there and just say, look, our user group is here, and passing on that information. And it was really, really wonderful to spend time with them and represent the community.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
I would like to thank ByWater and Jessie, especially for the chairs with backs. Sorry to keep saying that, but it was very helpful.
Were they trying to make you have a stool-based conference?
Yes.
Yeah, saving money everywhere you can. Well, thanks to the three of you for going. Thanks to ByWater for giving you a place to be. That does segue us into our first item of new business, which is a recap of your visit to ALA.
Actually, before we finish announcements, I have a question related to announcements.
Yeah.
I'm curious as to when people that submitted suggestions or presentation proposals will hear. I don't see conference committee any on here, so I thought I would ask, is there any update on when those are gonna, when that's gonna happen, when people are gonna be told whether or not their presentation will be at the conference?
George, I swear I emailed you. I will go look again.
You did? Okay.
I think
maybe I missed it. I've been pretty busy and I was off for 3 days last week. That's how long it takes to prepare for and recover from a Weird Al concert.
Sure. No, I understand.
Okay, I'll go double check then. But I kind of was surprised there isn't any kind of conference update in the announcements section.
Well, hey, conference announcement. We have our conference committee meeting immediately following this. We should have the registration form up on the website shortly thereafter. And it was my understanding that I had emailed everybody who submitted a conference proposal with a response. George, your response was weird, so maybe I started to write it and then forgot.
I know I haven't gotten anything yet.
Well, what did I do, guys? What did I do?
I got mine.
I got mine.
Did you send it from Andrew or President?
I think I sent it from President. Spoiler, George, you said you wanted to do a session that wasn't really a session. And I said, cool, we want you to do a session that's not really a session.
Okay, well, I'm going to go look through my email right now. And if I don't find it, I'll yell at you again before the end of the meeting.
That seems fair. Other announcements before we move out of announcements? Okay. Well, then moving into new business, we have recap from our table at ALA. Hey, you intrepid ALA folks.
Well, it was fun and exhausting, but then I can say that about pretty much any conference I go to. I talked to quite a few people, handed out flyers. I'm not sure if anyone is joining us today who found out about us during ALA. Probably the most significant thing, maybe, is that a gentleman from Amazon came up to me and said that Amazon is interested in selling books to libraries along with the MARC record. And he said, yes, I know we're evil. And he's interested in maybe doing a presentation in Providence. I sent all that to info, but not to anyone else, I think.
Yeah, I saw your email. That's cool. If Amazon wants to make library ordering easier, I'm not mad about it.
I gave him the koha-us card.
I'm not
So-
like thrilled about it. They're not my favorite people, but yeah.
Yeah. I have to say we get a lot of books from them. Rittenhouse stopped sending her stopped doing print books, so I order them and get reimbursed and get to keep the points.
Well, that will be exciting to watch for. I know we were just emailing about somebody from Brodart wanting to come to the koha-us acquisition SIG meetings. You know, if vendors want to start paying more specific attention to koha users, that can't hurt.
Yeah. Oh, guy's name was Roberto, and he lives in Spain, so I don't think he'll be coming from Spain.
One thing I learned at the conference is that Communico is now supporting Koha for their customers. They say they're not going after new business supporting Koha, but current customers who are having trouble with their APIs and such on their proprietary ILSs, he might talk to that customer about, you know, coming to Koha. So yeah, and it does sound like they want to contribute to the community. So that's one good thing I heard there. So yeah, and it was great having the table there, and thanks to Fred for being there most of the time, and more than the other of us. He really covered the table, and thanks to John for being there, and yeah, it was great.
Oh, you two had ALA stuff to do. All I
Mhm.
wanted to do or wanted was look at all the other vendors. I got most of them visited.
Mhm.
Yeah, the ones I wanted to. Got some silly
And
library t-shirts.
I won't add very much to what was already said by Chip and Fred. I'd like to thank Jessie for coming over whenever she was talking to people, and would come over and grab some brochures and grab some cards and introduce us to people that were visiting the booth. Nate expressed that he thought the arrangement worked out very well, and it was great having us in very close proximity, that is to say, the same booth. And that was not something that was true in 2022. Yes, we were there, but we weren't by ALA exhibition hall standards, not far away, but we weren't there either. And so that created a dynamic that I think is very reflective of the way we as an organization and ByWater as a company interact with each other presently. And so it was great to be able to be there. And Fred, just like he did in 2022 in DC, did a fantastic job in representing us and what we do. And I told Chip before Fred had shown up, I said, Fred's going to be wearing a bright neon orange hat. And that was the hat Fred did bring to the conference, just like he did in Washington, D.C. So it was, again, from my perspective, having been responsible for what took place in 2022, this was also a very effective presence for us, though the conference itself was smaller, only about 14,000 people this year. The exhibition hall itself was only about 2/3 of its regular size. So we'll see how this kind of contraction, if that kind of contraction continues on. But again, very worthwhile. And again, thanks to ByWater for providing us with an opportunity to share their space.
Oh, and I also took some brochures and koha-us business cards over to the Equinox folks, who were happy to put them on their table.
Yeah, as much as we appreciate the contributions of the ByWater people, I say as a ByWater employee, it's great to see other vendors interested in it as well. Like if we could have Equinox as involved in Koha-US as ByWater is, and Communico as involved in Koha-US as ByWater is, that'd be great for everybody. Like I see no downside there.
Mhm.
Any other conference thoughts or questions? Well, then I want to move us on in the agenda, but I'm going to go a little bit out of order because I think like conversation's going to expand a bit on the second bullet, and the third bullet's going to be a little more discreet. So George, if you don't mind, can I ask you to give us an update on the Charitable Foundation Steering Committee?
We met, it might have been last Monday, but we've gotten to the point where at the a couple of other members of the committee have worked out a plan to get feedback from the community on what we've done so far. And so look for that in all the usual places so that we can, or I think I might be conflating part of this with the Aspen Discovery Steering Committee, who has also gotten to the point where they're looking for feedback. But I think both, if you're using Aspen, that group will be working on getting feedback soon too. Both, and that's where both of the groups are, is in the, we've done a lot of work. Now it's time to get some feedback on what we've done from the members. So I would look forward to seeing something in email or on Slack or a combination of channels of communication asking for feedback on those things. The Koha governance or the steering committee hasn't gone through as many iterations as the Koha group has, because there's been less attendance at the meetings since the Hackfest in March. But I think that there will be at least a few of the people here in our area at the Open Library Foundation's conference this year is going to be in Kansas City. And so I know that Andrew from Open Fifth is going to be there. And I think some other people from ByWater and from other organizations will be at WolfCon. And Jason and I are doing a Koha presentation at WolfCon. And Chris Cormack will also be at WolfCon. So we're definitely moving in towards being a full member of the Open Library Foundation. But I would expect to see some feedback questions from the Koha community soon.
Cool, thanks for that update. We will watch for our opportunity to provide feedback on this important process. Does anybody have questions for George or thoughts on the I have to go look at the official name, Koha Charitable Foundation Steering Committee?
I'm happy to answer questions here, but you can always email george@nekls.org if you have questions you want to ask offline. Or I'm in Mattermost right now. You can ask questions there. I'm in the ByWater Slack. You can ask questions there. So.
And if you're showing up at this meeting wondering what we're talking about with the Koha Charitable Foundation Steering Committee, this has been an ongoing project. Give me a private message on Mattermost and I'll dig up the press release about the beginning of this whole thing rather than trying to recap it all right now. Because I didn't see anybody's eyes go weird when we brought it up. I think everybody knows what we're talking about, but just in case.
I would say that with both the Koha Charitable Foundation and with the Aspen Discovery Steering Committee, one of the things that we're moving towards in the bylaws on both of these is an effort to try to get more participation from libraries. The Aspen Discovery Steering Committee is actually working towards making the board of directors a vendor-free board. So, getting involvement from the community is the goal in both of these things, one of the goals. So currently on the Koha Foundation Steering Committee, I think there are 11 or 12 members, and Sophia from the French users group, and myself, and I can't think of his name, from Helsinki. I think we are the only 3 participants in that committee that aren't from a vendor. So it would be great to see, once we get the charitable foundation launched and once there's the Aspen governance in place, it would be really useful and important to see more members from libraries taking part in that, in those organizations. So.
Yeah, speaking as an employee of a vendor, don't let those vendors make decisions for you. I mean, sincerely, get in there and take as much of a voice as you want to.
Yeah,
Makes
I mean, if we're gonna just sit back and let the companies run the organization, we might as well just be buying software from a vendor, but from like, well, I wouldn't say Ex Libris, but maybe Cersei Dynex. You know, if we're not gonna have any input, we might as well go someplace where we won't be allowed to have any input. So,
Well, I will say, I think where my head is getting a little stuck with this is like the understanding has been that this is more having to do with like legal structure and funding, like like applying for grants and such. So, like, but then like the actual what happens in the software is still very much, you know, library and community driven. So I think like if there were a better understanding of what input is hoped for from libraries on this particular, for the charitable foundation in particular, that might get more.
so the Koha Charitable Foundation in particular, the idea isn't that it's going to take over any of the existing things in Koha, but it's going to be there as a place that can help possibly be a holding company for assets. Because like right now, an individual owns the DNS, owns the host name for the Koha website, and a different individual pays for the web hosting, and a different individual, there's all these assets that are owned by Koha that are spread out across different places. And so one of the things that the charitable foundation can do is to be a place that owns that holds those assets on behalf of the community. Some of the assets, like the intellectual property, is already owned by a separate trust in New Zealand. And the plan isn't that the Koha Charitable Foundation will take over to that. But the idea is that this will be a place that can help organize the community and be a place where the community can collect money and do a lot of the things that we're doing in Koha US in the United States, on behalf of the community, not just in the United States, but in the community throughout the world. So I would think of it like as a way to step out of the United States and do what we're doing in Koha US worldwide is one way to look at it. And that's the thing, is what the charitable foundation does is going to have a lot to do with who's in it and who's participating in it. And I think the more voices from different places and different areas and different backgrounds, the more interesting it's going to be. If you know what I mean. Does that help answer your question, any, Kristi?
A little bit, yeah.
I mean, when we started doing Koha US, back in, the original organization kind of got off the ground in 2013 at the conference in Reno, and then we had our first US only meeting in 2014 in Wenatchee, Washington, and we didn't know what we were doing. And I think that there are only like 3 or 4 people that I see here that were there. And this organization grew over time, and it grew based on the participation of the people that are in it. And if we want to be able to help decide what the Koha Charitable Foundation does, we need to be a part of it. And if we aren't going to be a part of it, then we're then we're going to get left out of it, I think is the way I would look at it.
Hey, Kristi, you started your question from what am I trying to say? From the position that like the Koha-US Charitable Foundation is doing more administrative things rather than more like deciding the process of how code gets into Koha. And that is true. I think the Aspen governance end is a little bit more like in the realm of deciding how different bits of code get into Aspen, is a little more ground level process oriented. So yeah, different questions between the two projects.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was strictly thinking of Koha Charitable Foundation.
Yeah, so I mean, what it's going to do is going to be based on who the members of the board are at any particular time. And so if the board is made up entirely of people working for software vendors, it's going to do something completely different than what it's going to be if if it's made up entirely of librarians and library staff. And so I would say if library staff want to have input on what the charitable foundation does, we should, be a part of it. We should take part in it and try to I think we should definitely make sure that we have a voice in there, that there are at least a couple, that was the reason that I raised my hand at the conference in Montreal and said that I would be a part of this steering committee for the foundation, is because nobody else from a library had raised their hand and said, I want to be a part of this. Everybody else that had said, I want to go to those meetings, I want to take part in this. Everybody else that said that worked for a software, worked for ByWater or OpenFifth or a company. And so I wanted to make sure that we had at least one voice in there that was from a library. And then Sophia stepped up and said she wanted to take part. So, if we don't take part, we're not gonna have a voice there. And I think we should try to have a voice there. So I encourage everybody to ask questions, and anybody can come to these meetings. You just won't get a vote, but we've had other people come to the meetings. They're on they've been on the community calendar, on the Koha community calendar. And the same is true for the Aspen community. There are more library voices on the Aspen community governance steering committee than there are in the Koha Charitable Foundation steering committee. But if we want to have a voice, we've got to participate. And so I would just that's my plug there, is really that we should try to make an effort to participate. So I don't want to be, I was on the conference committee for 6 years because I wanted to make sure that that there was a voice, that there was a voice from this part of the world that was heard on that committee. And I don't want to be, and I didn't want to be there for 6 years, but I was, because I wanted to make sure, that there was a voice for the people that I represent here in Kansas on that committee. And part of it was my own fault for volunteering to host it. But, it was important to me that, there was somebody from the Midwest that was part of that. And so I stuck with it for a long time. And as much fun as it's been, I don't want to be the sole voice of United States Koha users on the Koha Foundation steering committee whatever happens with the Koha Charitable Foundation. I'd really like to see somebody else, step up and take part too, just to make sure that we have a voice there. So
yeah. Well, George, thank you for being on the committee, and thanks in advance to whoever comes along in the future to let George not be on the committee anymore.
Sorry, Jason. Sorry, Christopher. Yeah, I know it's going to be one of you two probably. So
start lining up your ringtone. Okay.
Or Fred.
Further thoughts on the Koha Charitable Foundation Steering Committee? before we move on to the wonderful world of ERM? Okay, hearing none. Noah, who is here someplace. I saw his face, and then
I'm
he's
here.
gone. Okay,
Yep,
Zoom
I'm here.
reorganized people. Oh, there you are.
There, yeah, I popped up on
no,
your screen.
Yeah, Noah emailed in questions about the ERM module generally and a particular bug in particular. And so we're here to talk about ERM, which coincided nicely with Jessie from ByWater messaging me about setting up an ERM SIG. So a two-part conversation. Hey, Noah, what were your ERM questions?
Well, yes, I think, and first of all, so I'm just so everyone, I'm new to this. You know, I'm not sure exactly what the protocol is for bringing items up or where the appropriate place to go is. So I hope this is the right place. I was a little surprised, Kristi, that it made it on the agenda so quickly. So thank you.
Yeah. If
I
you
appreciate
email
that.
me agenda items, I will put them on there. So
Okay, it's that easy. All right. Because I just had these questions and I said, I don't know if this is the appropriate place. And yeah, so I'm glad I made it onto the agenda. But my name is Noah Brubaker. I'm the Associate Director for PALNI, the Private Academic Library Network of Indiana. And we're a consortium of 24 private colleges and universities. And we're in the process of migrating to Koha. So we have one library that's going to be moving over the summer. So here in just like about a month or so. And then we have a couple more that will be coming on in the winter. And then the rest will be following after that. And we are going with Equinox as our provider. So Andrew, I was listening closely and maybe we should start advocating with them as we're in this process to become more involved on the community development side of things. So we'll kind of track that, I think, more closely like going forward. But yeah, just wanted to give all of you some context. And I've met some of you individually, George, Fred, Jason, and Bob. I think I've met with all of you maybe at one point or another as we were kind of figuring out our path forward for our ILS situation here. So thanks to all of you for your help with that. But as we're getting into this, we're as I mentioned, we're a consortium, and so we're going to be kind of sharing the system together. So it's rather than separate instances for each library. But one of the things that we've looked at was the ERM module, which is awesome that it exists in Koha. On the current system that we're on now, we kind of have to pay extra for that functionality, for that module basically to be activated for us. So it's really, really great that it's there. And even the version 1 of the ERM module is really perfect for us because that's kind of equivalent to the functionality that we have on the system today. But we were noticing when we were configuring it in our own sandbox that we had set up that it doesn't really work across for kind of like a multi-tenant situation. And then I was pointed to the bug enhancement related to being able to have kind of that branch set up for the ERM module. And then that led me to go out to the koha-us site to see, is there some place where we can have conversations about the development of the ERM module? And I didn't see that. So that's, again, so the SIG was one question I had as well was, is there a place for those conversations? And maybe Jessie, you'll address that here in just a minute. But yeah, I just didn't know if there were ways to, like, how the community actually goes through the process to kind of prioritize things. That's something that we'd like to know more about. So if that doesn't, need to happen here, if I could just talk to someone else about that, that's fine. But just generally speaking, I think, yeah, like how do you all, get an enhancement, across the finish line in terms of development? Yeah, and is this the right place to have that conversation? I suppose is another thing I was going to ask.
I volunteer to start the conversation because there was a lot of questions in there, and I'll start answering the ones that I heard. So the ERM is very new. That came to Koha in 2022. I think 2011 was the first iteration where we saw the ERM, and a lot of Koha users were using Coral, which was the open source ERM. And Koha and Coral didn't really talk to each other that great. There was a couple connections on both the vendor side and the bibliographic side, where if you had a Koha bibliographic record, you could see that it was in Coral. Anyways, the community came to a consensus and said, we need to put that ERM into Koha. So the first iteration was ERM as a standalone system. It's not currently connected to any of the acquisitions functionality within the koha system. Now, my wonderful colleague Rhonda, who is our acquisition SIG chair for Koha US, she and I both sit on the acquisitions 2.0 committee for koha. And as we're transitioning and coming up with a plan for acquisitions to take like a kind of a new look, ERM is actually tied into that. So the goal is to get the ERM into library groups. Now, I love to tell history. In 2018, when Bob's library migrated to Koha community, they brought the helped with the development for library groups. Library groups allows functionality to be, how can I say this? Set by individual libraries or branches within a consortium. So that functionality will eventually come for the ERM, and the bug that you shared, Michaela, she's actually on the Acquisitions 2.0 committee. So she represents some of our German contingents in the Koha community. Noah, it's coming. It's on the roadmap. We anticipate that most of the functionality will start in the 2511 release, and then continue for about 2 years as we move it in there. And I'll pause and stop talking. I'm happy to talk about how an enhancement or development works in the community, but I think somebody else should talk.
Just rounding up questions and comments from the chat. Christopher asked if this would make sense to just sort of fold into the acquisition SIG. And it's definitely acquisitions related, but it's also kind of like statistics gathering. And I think ultimately it's just sort of a complex and weird enough beast that it becomes its own topic. But yeah, it is tangential, and yeah, kind of won't be a huge group to start.
I messaged Andrew while we were at ALA because we had a couple partners that are using the ERM that came up and asked, they're like, we should start an ERM SIG for Koha US. So that was my pinging Andrew frantically as people were asking. So
This was at ALA.
This was at ALA, yeah.
We had some jokes about whether or not there is protocol for getting on the agenda or for making a SIG, and not really. When Jessie asked me about making a SIG, the last SIG we created was baby devs, and that process was Lizette said she wanted to make a SIG, and so there was one. They're very informal, so hooray. It can exist for as long as people care to meet. Yeah, and we did that. Noah, your questions ran very largely into the general question of like, how do you get involved in Koha US and who do you talk to about stuff? This is always a wonderful place to start because it's the biggest like gathering of everybody.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know if there was, a certain, process for that, or if this meeting was, you could just bring up anything that's kind of, you're dealing with or thinking about.
Yeah, I mean, unless we continue this conversation for 24 more minutes, we'll go into open time, which is where this conversation also could have been.
Okay, all right, well, okay,
Yeah.
Thank you. That helps a lot. Okay, that makes it, I think the barrier to entry is pretty low, which is great.
It is
So
very
appreciate that.
low.
I've sometimes described the Koha community as a lightly governed anarchy.
One of the more official things we do is the development committee that meets monthly identifies a development each year to put some money toward, and that would be like one way this could get completed. This is probably a larger project than the development committee tends to have money for all in 1 year. But like that, you asked about sort of how
Yes.
something like this gets started in the community. It's also a fair amount of, I think, just like rabble rousing. This conversation that we're having right now, in which you sell people on the idea of the thing you want. So
Okay.
that you go out to Bugzilla and make enough noise over there so people notice.
Okay, that's helpful too. And we're used to that kind of thing, again, with the ILS that we're on now, to kind of advocate for the sort of features that we want to see. So yeah, I think we can operate with that. So
I-
Jessie, then should we just stay tuned for the ERM SIG to be kind of like to show up on the website then, where we can start attending or signing up or whatever?
Yes, so this in the 2023 koha-us conference, which was in Portsmouth, we all said we should create an ERM SIG, but we need a volunteer to lead it. And so that didn't happen. So I said, I will start the first meeting and hopefully I can convince somebody there to take it over. But I'm going to start it because ERM is kind of like my passion. I was a law librarian back in the day, so I like the ERM very much and am in favor of seeing it move forward. So I will work with the koha-us team to establish at least a first meeting so we can get it out there and see if we can get some tributes to take on as chair.
Yeah, I think that would be great. And I would say that we, like within our group, we would have capacity to have someone do that. But I would just say that, we don't have experience working within within this community specifically. So, if there's, it's kind of like a, I don't know if you, maybe we could have that conversation in the meeting, but if there's some sort of, getting started email, for how this should work, if we can get those types of details, I think we could probably find someone.
Christopher said in the chat that ERM is still pretty foreign to him and he needs a cartoon to explain it better, which I totally understand. It's pretty foreign. Or at least like it's a whole different thing. It's not a thing Koha does now, and so it's lack of existing mental model. One of the things I have not gotten together in my interim as president here is demoing things like that here in these meetings. I think that's a good use of our time to have the ERM sim like SIG show up to say, hey, here's some ERM. Here's an example of what it looks like.
So I was going to post in the chat here. It'll take me a second to find it, but David, one of the koha-us members, made a presentation on how his library is using ERM module at our conference last year. And granted, it's a public library, but it would, if nothing else, you'll learn something about how somebody is using ERM already. Like, other thing I was going to say is, I don't think we've actually said this out loud, but another option for getting developments advanced is for your library to sponsor or co-sponsor with another system developments. That is something that sometimes expedites developments for things that you really need.
Yes, and in kind of like in this whole process of us learning, like we saw that on the ByWater site that they have some of these kind of posted where you can kind of make a contribution to get something done. And so that is something that we would, I think, be interested in learning more about. Maybe and almost if I don't know, like if it, I guess maybe opening that up or in some way to where, like you're saying, Kristi, like there's a process for libraries that want to work together to do that. And not that, I mean, not to undermine what ByWater is doing, but if there could be like a community version of that that's kind of in a neutral space where it's kind of developer agnostic or something, and it's just saying like we want this, and then we can select like who we want to develop it together.
And
I think that would be really good.
I agree. That brings us back to the first bullet point of new business, or sorry, the Koha Charitable Foundation. Like that's the organization that wants to exist to do that sort of larger pooling of funds for funding of development. Not to say koha-us couldn't do that theoretically, like be some sort of vendor agnostic clearinghouse coordinator of funds, but it's not a thing koha-us has done largely. And it is a thing that ByWater does now, but I'm trying to remember if we've ever had a funded development from a library that was not a ByWater partner. There's no inherent reason that couldn't happen.
Well, we've seen some of those enhancements, and we looked at them and thought, well, yeah, we'd like this too. And the nice thing, I guess, about Koha is that whether ByWater develops it or someone else develops it, as long as it ends up in the code base, that's great, right? So however it happens is okay.
Yeah, and I should back up. Equinox does submit things to the Koha community. They are active developers of Koha. I I do not know what their like sponsored development process is. If you went to them and asked, can we pay you to make this happen? I have no idea. But yeah, credit to them as contributing members of the Koha community. And also like they do show up to these meetings. They do come to our conferences. I would bet they feel a little bit like this is a ByWater party that they're not completely invited to. And if I could communicate that, to them that they are very invited to this. Yeah.
Very
Yes,
much so. We know.
yeah, and I had a communication saying like, are these meetings only for ByWater customers? And I was like, no, they're open to everybody. And I said, I think there's even some here who self-host Koha that participate in these too. So
Fred,
yeah, it's like kind of for everybody. Yeah, that's what I was thinking of you, Fred, because I thought you did. Okay.
Yeah. I would say we as Koha US are forever trying to become less of a club of ByWater partner libraries.
Yeah. And you probably have not met her, but Lauren Denny on the education committee, she's been at a self-hosted organization for a long time.
She got a new job though.
Oh, well.
Moving to a hosted library.
Is she? Where's she going?
She said this in one of our meetings last month, so I think it's open news.
I missed it.
I'm gonna clam up though, because suddenly I realized I'm giving somebody else's news.
We know
It's public news.
they're unsupported. Lots of they're unsupported members out there. And actually, somebody from Equinox gave a really good presentation at our conference. One of the developers, I want to say her name is Jen, but yeah, we want everyone here.
Yeah, and actually they're planning to be at the next conference as well. Chicken jokes.
Well, thank you for all of that information. That helps me a lot, especially just knowing like that it is on a path to, having kind of a more like a SIG created for it in particular, I think would be really helpful for us, because again, like the functionality that's there and even in this first version is great. I mean, it's almost equivalent to what we have now. And it does connect to a lot of different things like acquisitions potentially. And Andrew, you mentioned like the statistical aspect and those things. So I do think like it would be nice to have its own SIG for those that might be kind of power users of that module. And George, if you have information on the like as things move forward with the foundation, I'd be happy to be involved, or we might be able to find someone who would be involved in that. Just would want to know a little bit more about like what the requirements might look like for participation there, and then kind of like what just maybe an overview of what the goals of that would be for a participant.
Yeah, if you send me your email, like I said, my email is george@nekls.org.
Okay.
If you send me an email, I can send you more information.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
One thing I would say about the creating a SIG is that we've never had any formal process, and they all kind of work differently. I am the leader of one of them. I don't remember which one. And I filled in last month for Bob. Well, I guess that's an Aspen group. Never mind, that one doesn't count. I think I'm the leader of the one for consortia, or it might be circulation. I think
you are consortia.
Okay, thanks, Bob. And we have a very, it's really informal, as you can tell. That I can't even remember the name of it. So we just kind of, a week beforehand, I sent out a thing saying we're going to have a meeting, and if anybody has any questions or wants to add to the agenda, here's where it is. You can add directly to it, or you can send me things you want to add to the agenda. But some of the other groups are a little more formal. And a lot of times there will be nothing on the agenda, and there will just be like 3 or 4 people will show up, and we'll end up filling a whole hour. And other times we'll have like 5 things on the agenda, and we'll be done in 10 minutes. It really varies. The acquisitions people usually have a little list of questions that people want to talk about, or that might be the catalogers too. But they start with a list of questions people have, and they just work through answering those questions. It all really depends on the group, and it depends on who's leading it, and depends on what the members want to accomplish in a meeting. And some of the groups meet monthly, some of them meet every other month. It really varies based on who's participating and what they want to do. So I would say just, try and go for it, and don't be surprised if only a couple of people show up for the first few times, and it might get busier or it might get slower. Some of the groups have kind of disappeared. We don't have the demo instance committee. I don't know if that was a committee or a special interest group was meeting, and that just kind of faded away.
I think
after
that
the
the
committee
education
was
SIG
done
has
on
taken
that.
over the demo.
Yeah, now the
Fred's right.
education and a different group has taken over management of the demo site. So, but it was one that came and it went, and I'm sure that might happen with others. So it's kind of like anything else. It's what you put into it is what you guys get out of it. So
Thanks,
Didn't
George.
we
Yeah.
have a SIG that was based on, I don't know, books or knitting or something? I can't remember.
yes,
there
there
used to be
was
a
a
book
group that Lizette
discussion.
was leading
Yeah.
that was like a book club, like books and knitting, and they met in the evenings, and they would just talk about what books they've been reading, and they would knit. And I don't think that exists anymore. So yeah. And actually, I should have made an announcement earlier. This is Nikki. This is the new person at NEKLS, and she says that sounds like fun. So maybe we found a new leader for books and knitting. I don't know. We'll have to think of that.
Back
Yeah,
on the
it
topic.
was
of
after my
recording.
bedtime, so I could never go.
Oh, fair. But yeah, koha-us will do whatever you want it to do if you make it do it.
Kind of like Koa.
Yeah. More flexible than sensible.
Well, thank you all for that conversation. It's helpful. And it's nice that, because I do think that, and we have some people actually in our group that have been participating, I think, in some of the SIGs. I don't know who exactly, but we've been kind of promoting that a little bit more to our folks to say, hey, you might want to start getting involved in the community. So there may be more librarians from our institution showing up at some of these over time. But we do the same thing here, in our communities as far as, groups come and go or merge or take a different form. And, sometimes it's, really busy and sometimes it's not so busy. So that's, just reflective of what's going on in the community.
Well, welcome to koha-us. We're glad to have you here.
Thank you.
If we're
Thank
failing to invite you to do things, it's only because we're massively disorganized and we want you to just come in and do them. On that note, we've been having big open time energy for a while now, but I think we're officially in open time. Anybody have questions or concerns or thoughts or dreams? Oh,
I'd like to have enough money to buy a pony.
yeah, that'd be good.
If it's okay, I have one other question.
Yeah.
This came up after I'd emailed Kristi, so I didn't, I didn't follow up on that one. This one, we had met with a couple of libraries that were not formally in a consortium, but they were kind of really closely aligned. They were cross-listing things in their catalog and their patron databases and that sort of thing. And one of the things that they had mentioned was that there was a functionality in Koha that was, I think it was called ILSDI, and it enabled some kind of deeper integration for a discovery layer like ViewFind in particular. I think might take advantage of that, but I could not find any documentation on that. And many of our institutions are likely going to use EDS for their discovery layer. And I, emailed EBSCO about this, and I sent them a link to what was more like some sort of technical description of what that integration can do. But it just, listed different categories or levels of integration that could happen. But there was nothing really describing, what it actually does and how you would implement it and that sort of thing, because we were hoping to advocate with EBSCO, I guess, is at the end of the day, to see if EDS could have that connectivity to Koha, because that is a little bit of a limitation for us. Today we can have patrons do everything, place holds, check their My Account features and all that from the discovery layer. But with EDS, we won't be able to do that. They'll have to click through and go to the OPAC, I think, to be able to actually place holds and do those activities. So I just wondered if there was like, I don't know, if what is happening with that, or if there is anyone currently using it.
So I put the Koha manual entry for ILSDI in the chat. That's a large question. Yeah, ILSDI it's kind of like an API. It's like a web-based interaction protocol with Koha. Like you can load a URL that tells Koha to do a thing. And yeah, there are, like Aspen uses the ILSDI integration a little bit for a couple of things that don't have APIs. And I wouldn't be surprised if EDS uses it a bit. We do tend to, the EBSCO made a really good EDS plugin for Koha that moves EDS, all the EDS functionality into the Koha OPAC.
Yeah.
So I've seen a lot of libraries using that. I don't.
Okay, because and what we wanted to do, I think, is kind of the reverse, right?
Yeah.
Like have people start at EDS and then connect in to the what I mean, through the OPAC that, or to perform all those activities from the EDS side. And I thought maybe this is a way to make that happen, but I wasn't sure if that's the best way, or if maybe there's other, like, I don't know, Andrew, like in your experience, like, are there, like, is this the approach that they would want to use, or should we be asking them to maybe explore like the individual like APIs that are available for Koha instead?
I would think if this requires EBSCO to code something new, it would make more sense to code it to the API instead of the ILSDI.
Okay.
And I'm trying to remember.
And those APIs that
yeah.
And those APIs that exist, like they include things like doing, like the My Account and placing holds and doing actions. Okay. Thank you. Sorry again, I don't know if this is the appropriate place for these conversations, but it's just something that was top of mind for me lately.
I think so what SIG, this is a question for the group. What SIG would you go to for that level of question? It's like probably system administration. Yeah. To catch all complicated stuff, SIG.
Got it. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, it is open discussion. Anything goes pretty much.
Yeah. I put a link in the chat to the Koha API. It's a slightly more specific link than I really meant to point at, because you don't care about bundled items particularly. But that's all the Koha API documentation, which would show EBSCO how to do all that stuff. They probably already have that somewhere.
One of the things I would say, Noah, about asking questions about EDS would be to send out something to the mailing list, because I don't know of a lot of people that use it. I know Christopher's library used to use it, but you guys dropped it. So I would reach out on the mailing list, because there aren't a lot of libraries that are using it, at least that I know of, that come to these meetings regularly. And so I would reach out that way to find out who to talk to, rather than just hope that they're going to show up at the system administrators meeting.
Okay, thanks, George. I will do that. And I will probably send another email to EBSCO specifically with the link to this API documentation, just so that they're aware of it, if they're not already, because it's something we'll probably be, on that side advocating for them to do development work to make that integration better.
So another place I would reach out to other people would be the chat server. Are you on the Mattermost chat server yet?
I think I may have signed up for that a while back. I need to go back and check, to be honest with you. It sounds familiar, because I think, did it change from one platform to another or something at one time? Because I think there was some information about that, and I was trying to figure out where I need to sign up, and I think I did get in there.
Somebody put a link in the, I guess it was Andrew put a link in the chat box there, but yeah, that would be a good place to ask about EDS too, I think.
Okay.
Oddly enough, for new users, there's a video that I think will be out tomorrow that has a new user's reference guide discussed in it. So if you watch for tomorrow's video from Christopher and I, you might see some more resources available for new to Koha people.
Okay, actually, I will watch for that because that's something then that we can repost in our community
Yeah.
here so that everyone sees it. Yeah, thank you. That's very timely for us anyway.
The half hour draws ever closer. Very dramatic phrasing. Our meeting's gonna end. Quick, quick, last call for topics. Kristi has a bug. Oh yeah, I don't like your bug, Kristi. I spent so long yesterday repeating the word horse to myself as I searched for horse over and over again. Oh, but you're muted.
And I've been muted this whole time. Sorry. This bug just has to do with like when you are trying to, with how Elasticsearch handles catalog searches like title as phrase. So what we've been noticing is like, say you've got a title and the title is just cookies, like no other words in the title. Like when you search cookies, that title that's just cookies does not show up at the top. It's buried somewhere in there between like everything about Cookie Monster and like, as an example. So if you also are somebody who wants searches to search how you want searches to search, then this is the bug for you.
There is a similar one that Nick has already, I think, written a patch for that prioritizes titles over over items in the yes, that's yep. Thank you. Andrew just posted it, and I think this covers some of what you want because we were having the same problem with like Toy Story. When people search Toy Story, they want the movie Toy Story, and we were getting all kinds of stuff. So I would look at this to see if it covers at least some of what you want.
So bug 38694, the second one I put in the chat, is in Koha version 2505. But if you are a ByWater partner, it's in Koha version 24.11.05 because we backported it early because it was annoying a lot of people. So there's a system preference you can turn on that will make it so that when you do a keyword or title search, anything where your whole search string exactly matches the entire title will push up higher in the relevancy. So if you're looking for the Geraldine Brooks book Horse, it will show up at the top of the list instead of 30 items down underneath everything else about horses. Or Toy Story, if you search for exactly Toy Story, will push up to the top of the list. But that is distinct from Kristi's bug, where she wants to be able to like really specifically say, give me a search that only returns books where the entire title is horse.
No, I don't know that that's so much what we'd be looking for is like just have the what you described, have horse show up as the first result.
Because as far as I know, there is not really a way in Elastic right now to say, only give me things where the whole title is exactly this whole string.
There's a really old one from 2011 that if I can find it, I'll post. Sorry, I don't. I'll just add it to the minutes here if I find it because I don't want to keep everyone. But like, there's one that was saying like we should have searches have the option to do starts with, contains, like we do with our patron search for titles. But I don't know if Elasticsearch kind of messes that up.
That was a 4-digit bug, which is always a good sign. But yes, there's some particular searching behavior that isn't particularly possible right now. Okay, we're a little over time, and we're supposed to have conference planning meeting now.
Are we staying on this one or are we going to the other link?
We'll
Other
go
link.
to the other Zoom like we're supposed to, and we'll give it 5 minutes so everybody can get a drink of water.
Okay.
Last call for general meeting things. No one is shouting urgently. Fred unmuted himself to make a joke.
No, I just was about to say goodbye when the appropriate time came.
Okay.
See y'all in a bit.
Bye.
Bye.
See?
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you.